put something in the chat about how do you measure progress in, well, maybe called subjects, I suppose, but generally speaking, like geography and art and so on. And actually, really, I've been reflecting on it since I read it, and I still haven't come up with something coherent. How do you actually measure progress in something like in a subject, but also in an area like art or geography or anything which is on a curriculum, for example? I'm surprising myself by how puzzled I am, but it's maybe a good sign. I thought I would have a brilliant answer immediately, but it's still been going on 10 minutes and I haven't got a brilliant answer.
I don't think
it must be coming soon.
Yeah,
I don't think there is an answer for art, really. I was thinking about exactly the same question, and I think it's so hard because it's so subjective in a way, isn't it? And you're forced as a teacher to be objective. And that's kind of what we've been working on with our project, isn't it, Jeremy? Is that idea that you can't really measure what the outcomes that the students produce are, because art is so powerful, and it's almost so difficult to measure that. They might be having their skills, but at the same time, it's about them learning about being an artist and presenting their work and sharing it. And so, I mean, I'm not an art teacher, but I do think it's a really difficult skill to be able to assess work.
Yeah, I'm still puzzled, but that does elucidate things. Yeah.
I think with the art teachers, they will look at the skills basis of their work. So what materials they've used, what actually art skills they've used. It's really tricky. But again, what we might see is something fantastic. Other people might think it's terrible.
I know. I mean, it's just odd because I thought it's such a fundamental question, the word progress, what that actually signifies to an individual or to a teacher or to anybody really in a particular depends a lot on context, but it made me really, it's something I'm going to take away and reflect on. There's something there to do with the way we connect with things we love and which we find expansive, I suppose, which is how I relate to art.
Yeah.
But for a plumber or an electrician, perhaps it can be similar if they have a real vocation for what they're doing, seriously. So
absolutely.
and also the idea that art just doesn't have a narrow definition.
Exactly.
Is there something about kind of ability to like present ideas and being able to see that change?
I think there's a lot in that, actually, based on my experience. I mean, intuitively, that makes a lot of sense, what you just said about the ability to bring it out of yourself and present it. I think that's what we found on our project, that it soon expanded, like in the sense, the way people, the way the participants dealt, well, they didn't deal with it, but the way they experienced it is a better word. It had a natural kind of growth very quickly too. I think it was quite exponential in a way, wasn't it, Rosie? Like witnessing it. Yeah. First couple of weeks, there was a bit of a settling in, but then it started to sort of expanding very quickly, and their grasp and interest in what they were doing really grew really quickly, and then sort of became consuming, and it certainly outpaced me, and I think possibly both of us maybe. I was frantically trying to keep up with the energy. They were, it was a bit intimidating at times. I was doing it remotely. I can't imagine what it was like being in the actual room. Hive mind around you.
It was quite unbelievable, actually, and that's something that I will never I feel like I'll never experience something quite so intense ever again, but it was brilliant at the same time. Do you want me to just talk through the project? Shall I start now? Is that?
That would be great.
That would be great. And I was wondering as well, Carol, it's lovely that you've joined us. Did you want to unmute and we can make it more of a conversation?
Hello.
Hello. Nice to see you. I'm sorry I'm at home at the moment, but you're in school, I see.
I'm in school. I think I'm the only one that I've seen in a school environment since it started.
Yeah. Oh, but what school are you at?
I'm at Brookvale Groovy. It's in Leicestershire.
Okay, all right then. So I'll try and tailor, if there's any questions, please, dive in where you want to. Okay, I'll just explain what the project is, because I don't think anybody's seen the report yet. So
No.
you're probably wondering what we're talking about at the moment. So really what we wanted to do, I work in a South East London school, comprehensive school, and I wanted to look at how to engage disadvantaged students. We were working with girls, but it could work in any school. It could work in primary, secondary. Are you in secondary?
Yeah.
Okay, so we targeted a group of students. So we started off with pupil premium students, and we were looking for those students in particular that weren't engaged with school, that perhaps might have lower attendance, maybe had particular social problems working in a school environment. And we got a group together, and we decided to focus on art. And I wanted to get those students to do something that was quite straightforward. I'm actually an English teacher, but we chose art because we felt it was accessible, but it also had elements of writing. So we decided to use the medium of digital art. So I don't know whether you are familiar with the idea of memes that students post online.
Mm-hmm.
And we got students to create memes, and those were all digital, which made it easier for us to work with. Now, you could do this with English work, poetry, you can make pieces of music, you could do pieces of art, you could do pieces of textiles, any piece of work, even a mathematical problem. And what I did was try to find somebody that I could work with remotely. And I wanted to get somebody who was professional. And so I found Jeremy, and Jeremy was just speaking a minute ago, and he was working in Wales at the time. And he is particularly interested in digital art and making memes. And so what I did was I set up a remote link with my students. So I was with the students in a computer room. They were creating pieces of work, and we made a template to make it a little bit easier, and we had a hashtag for the students to use. So there was some kind of formula there, but they were free to do whatever they wanted with their memes. And then what they did was they created the memes in the computer room. They sent them to me first, and that's really, really important. So to have somebody in the middle of the link, just to cover yourself in terms of safeguarding. Mm-hmm. They sent them to me, I sent them to Jeremy, and what Jeremy did, which was the amazing part of it, was that he changed the memes in some way, or he added comments to them, or he took words out, and he played with those ideas that the students had made, and he sent them back. And this was all in real time. So I was sitting there really frantically kind of working with these emails, and they were like, oh, I've got another one, miss, send it quick. And we were waiting in the room, and it would come up on the smartboard, the responses. And of course, some were really funny, and Jeremy's laughing because some of them are quite sarcastic. Some of them are really day to day. So it might be something about just getting up in the morning, that moment when your cornflakes wouldn't open. And then, as Jeremy said, as we went through the project, their responses became much more profound and deep about feelings of vulnerability, fragility, what the meaning of life was. And this, we're talking about year 7 students here, and being hungry and how that made them feel, all sorts of the problems that we know exist, but it kind of made them explicit. And so it was a really different way of assessing pupils, because it was low stakes. In the talk just now, we were talking a lot about high stakes assessment. This was low stakes, but they were testing their writing skills. They were playing in essence. And I think assessment really does have a lot to do with playing. And I think we've taken the joy out of it, really. And this created a real audience with a real artist. And I've done it since with different forms, with professional dancers, with somebody's asking a question below, and professional musicians, writers, performers, the Royal Court Theatre. And I think what the main message that I wanted to get to you is that you can approach people in professional industries and say, hey, would you like to help? So the next stage of the project was we exhibited, and we managed to get exhibitions in major galleries in London. So we had the Vinyl Deptford, in Deptford, Hoxton Gallery and Lewisham Art House, and we actually presented all of their work. We had them all professionally mounted, and it was surprisingly easy to do. I'm not an artist, I've never run an exhibition before, but I think having that outside voice who would reflect and respond immediately to their work was absolutely brilliant. I just wanted to bring Jeremy in because I don't want to speak for the whole time, but I don't know whether you want to add a bit more. But I'd say in particular those students that are hard to reach. We had a lot of students that were on the autistic spectrum who were fantastic. Like one student who's always been criticised for her writing, but she had a disability, and she felt like she was always being judged, but her work went up as it was, her writing, a story, mounted, even with my marking on it in the exhibition. So I think you can really play with this and get some people on board, and don't be worried about approaching kind of high level professional artists. So Jeremy, do you want to speak a little bit about your role?
Well, I was very privileged to be invited by Rosie to participate in this, and it was unlike anything I've done before or since, and I would love to do it again. It was very energizing and inspiring, working with a group of that age range, and also not to say particularity isn't the right word, but like Rosie mentioned, students, for example, on the autistic spectrum and so on, who I think were just beginning to really understand, in a way, to an extent, the inner world they inhabit, which is, I think, much more to do with the future than we suspect, in a sense. I can't go into it in depth, but I think we glimpsed that in the way they responded with such enthusiasm and energy to the project. And I still find a lot of fascination stemming from that, and an inspiration, and just generally the entire group, the speed with which they were responding. And the thing with digital interaction through digital media definitely has challenges and obstacles like any other form of interaction, but it was also very liberating for everybody, and I'd include myself as an artist, because you were working at such a pace. I mean, I would often be receiving these emails in the moment with 10, 15 attachments, and then I'd have to quickly scan them and choose 3 or 4 then I'd take 3 or 4 I wanted to respond to, and I'd have a load of windows open with different online art tools that I could use to change text into images, and some on my tablet, depending on how frantically fast I could go back and forth. Then I'd return them as quickly as I could, but it turned into an incredible dialogue. And then in particular, for example, one student that Rosie mentioned, obviously very gifted, not that the rest weren't, believe me, that's an unfair distinction actually, but in any case, she began to realize, because of the text element, she was definitely engaged by that, and that became a pretext for then sharing some writing that was just incredible actually. When I received it, when I received some of the work back, I would often be like literally dumbfounded, but at the same time I had to respond very quickly. So it was an amazing mix. And I think what we experienced, Rosie and I, was very intoxicating, in the sense that the energy and the sort of momentum of it was very, very compelling. I would say that was the word. And it's something I'd love to return to. And it definitely influenced my practice a great deal. I mean, seeing how the humble meme, which is one of the greatest means of communication now generally, but especially among young people. I mean, it's like maybe along with emojis, the single biggest form of communication used. And I'm not just saying not just on devices or online or whatever. I mean, it's how we glimpse that this is their language. It's not that it's this kind of aberration that's come out of, it's actually supplanting, and that leans a lot on the fact that Rosie's primarily an English teacher, so to speak. There's a lot of contextual material there that could be drawn out, I think, if we wanted to.
I think as well, it's you could adapt it to any subject. So I mean, you could just get somebody who's in a different room working as an audience, but I do think having that professional aspect, and I think as teachers we're really frightened of kind of approaching people that we see in the professional field of the arts, and specialists. But actually I said to Jeremy, you know, let's be sticky, let's keep asking them, and you'll be amazed. Like the Lewisham Art House didn't cost very much money at all. Vinyl Deptford was free. Hoxton we had to pay some money, but luckily Shine helped us to fund that, and it wasn't very much money, but you can use what resources you have. And I think within schools our budgets are limited, but you can do things that are really innovative with assessment that don't cost very much money. And the fact that they were arguing with artists and really kind of, it broke down that hierarchy, and creates aspiration, because their parents came to the galleries, they came to the galleries, they were looking around, they were talking to Jeremy because Jeremy came down to visit. It was and for me that's so powerful to say, actually you're able to go and work and do these professions and work with people who are specialists, and for them I found since lockdown it's really interesting to see, because we can't do so many of those projects. I'm sure you're finding that in schools as well, and those students, it has impacted on them. So those were students who were perhaps getting lower attendance because of lockdown. Their behaviour's perhaps gone down a hill a bit because they haven't got this space where they can be free to explore. And one of the students described it as not being in boxes. She said, I hate working in boxes, and assessment is like a box for me. I like to work with wiggly lines, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. I think that's a quote that's in the report actually. So there are examples of what work they did. Some are quite simple, some are really, really profound and open my eyes to a lot of what students are going through. We almost described it as like a doomsday book for our students, really, because it captures that idea of teenage consciousness that we talked about. I don't know whether you want to finish on that, Jeremy. Have we got any questions that people wanted to ask about the project?
Can I just ask, because obviously you talked about Year 7 girls, how many were in your group, and did that matter?
Well, I targeted pupil premium students to start with, and I started I started with 30, but I can go up to, because I'm used to working in big groups, I can go up anything to 100. So I'm very flexible, and if there's any students that want to join that haven't been targeted, they're very welcome. So we're flexible in the groupings, but you might want to start small with the project, especially with that kind of instant feedback.
Yeah, I was going to say you might be able to, but maybe Jeremy can't respond to 100 people at once. So
He's very fast.
It's not impossible, just challenging would be the word.
Yeah.
Not impossible at all. This is, I mean, often I was responding to 20 at a time, so who knows, maybe.
And can I ask Rosie just how long this project lasts for, or is it still going on? Is it still a sort of something you started and it's carrying on?
I still do it every week. At the moment, because of lockdown, it's hard because we've got bubbles, and it's usually a vertical group. So we have students that started in Year 7 who still come now, and they're still asking to come back, and they're in Year 10. So it is something that I think your students will hook into, and I think as well, if you get the right person to do it. And I would say, if you want to argue it with your leaders, you can say, well, actually, attendance goes up, engagement goes up, behaviour points go down, and also, you know, we've wiped out any internal external exclusions in the lower year groups, because they're engaged and they have something to look forward to, and you know, it's just great fun.
And you're running this as an extracurricular, or?
Yeah, I do it as extracurricular, but sometimes when I first started doing it, I did it with a class in an English lesson as well, so you could do it within a lesson.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? Please feel free to unmute if you want to ask a question. I was trying to think about how I could apply it to other subjects as well. So I was thinking, actually, if you had a student who's really great at maths, could you contact a specialist mathematician or somebody who uses maths in their field? Because I'm always asked with my projects, oh, how could you apply that to maths or science? and they could actually have somebody online say, well, actually, I think you could have gone about that problem in a different way. And there are many specialists in the field, and I think, especially with girls, we want to try and encourage more girls to go into STEM industry. And so you could apply it to any subject. I'm happy to work with anybody if you've got any questions about